Republicans, never missing an opportunity, decide, hey, you know what? Yeah, this whole thing about the immigration bill, maybe we can connect it to Boston. So first, Chuck Grassley gets in on the action.
Given the events of this week, it's important for us to understand the gaps and loopholes in our immigration system. While we don't yet know the immigration status of people who have terrorized the communities in Massachusetts, when we find out, it will help shed light on the weaknesses of our system.
Help shed light on the weaknesses of our system, connecting Boston to immigration. Seems pretty clear. Now, later at a different hearing, Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, is going to challenge Chuck-Grassley of Iowa. And we're going to get some Chuck-on-Chuck violence here.
The American people are overwhelmingly in favor of immigration reform. That's what every poll says. And
will
they will
Senator
not
Yale?
be, no, I will
Senator
not.
Yale?
Nope. And they will not be satisfied with calls for delays and impediments towards the bill. I would say to my colleagues, and I understand their views are heartfelt, the chairman has a very open process. I say that particularly those who are pointing to what happened, the terrible tragedy in Boston, as I would say, excuse for not doing a bill or delaying it many months or years.
I never said that.
I didn't say you did.
Never said that.
I didn't say you did, sir.
I didn't say anything
I didn't say
about
you did. I don't mean you, Mr. Grassley.
Gee, a little defensive? He certainly implied that. You saw the video, right? And everybody was crediting him. Another Republican credited Chuck Grassley, saying, hey, he brought up the immigration thing, man, and I think that's a great point. So what, you're going to get mad at him too and yell? And it's such a Democratic move to be like, I didn't say that. I didn't say. Yeah, you know what I said? Yeah, that's what I said, and I meant it. I'll show you the tape if you like, right? No, but no, of course not. Schumer backing away a little bit more here.
Mr. Chairman, I don't appreciate Senator demeaning the witnesses that have come here.
I wasn't intending, those remarks were not aimed at anyone on this committee or the three witnesses. There were people out there, you've read it in the newspapers, who have said it. And what I'm saying is, if there are things that come up as a result of what happened in Boston that that require improvement, let's add them to the bill. Maybe it should be made tighter still. We're open to that. That's all I'm saying.
That's all I'm saying. Look, you had a good point, man. Why do you let up? I mean, that's a microcosm of what happens in this country. The Democrat is right, and the Republican yells, I didn't say that! And the Democrat says, okay, no, I didn't mean you, I didn't mean any of the Republicans, I didn't mean anybody in the room. Okay, or you could have gone in this direction. Hey, you know what? Yeah, if I played you the tape as you did in the first tape we showed you, you'll see that that's what you heavily implied. But if that's not good enough for you, Chuck Grassley, I got quotes from Rand Paul, your fellow Republican senator. Okay, here's what he said. The facts emerging in the Boston Marathon bombing have exposed a weakness in our current system. Very similar to what Chuck Grassley said. But then he added, before Congress moves forward, some important national security questions must be addressed, referring to the immigration bill. Not clear enough yet for you? How's this for clear? Quote, we should not proceed until we understand the specific failures of our immigration system. Why did the current system allow 2 individuals to immigrate to the United States from the Chechen Republic in Russia, an area known as a hotbed of Islamic extremism, who then committed acts of terrorism? Were there any safeguards? Could this have been prevented? Does the immigration reform before us address this? In other words, I'm going to use Boston bombings as an excuse to stop the immigration bill while we reconsider it. That's exactly what the Republicans did, and Chuck Schumer should have kept going there and beat him over the head with it. So, one final thing on this, as I mentioned at the end of last week, if people like Rand Paul had gotten their way, well, we would have prevented some incredibly serious and dangerous people from coming from the general areas of hotbed Islamic extremism. For example, my God, you've got terrible fighting in Syria, you've got extremism there, you've got the dictator on one side, and on the other side, some people linked to Al-Qaeda as well. Well, if we had prevented people from Syria coming in, we would have lost Steve Jobs' father, and we would not have been able to create the most profitable company in the world. So, keep out the immigration. I saw a different article today about how some of the top 10 companies, or 10 huge companies that would not have been created if we didn't allow immigrants in the country. Another company run by an immigrant, or founded by an immigrant? Google. Yeah, not a big deal. We just would have lost Google and Apple. Keeping immigrants out, genius move. Yeah. Oh, by the way, good point, and TYT, but I'm not sure that would convince them, Jesus. They might go another direction on that one. Oh, we lose the Dogan and Cenk doesn't come here. Apple and Google, but we lose TYT. I think that's how the Republicans might see it.